I am Rachel Franklin, 23 years old and fresh out of finance school in Boston. For most of my life, I had what I thought was a good relationship with my parents, despite their controlling tendencies. On my birthday last month, I expected a nice dinner celebration. Instead, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said those words I will never forget. "You are nothing but a burden." That night, they kicked me out with just one suitcase. Little did they know, my finance degree would become their worst nightmare. If you have ever felt betrayed by family, drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from, and subscribe to see how I turned my life around after this devastating night. I grew up in Brookline, an affluent suburb of Boston, in what anyone would call an upper-middle-class family. My father, William Franklin, built his reputation as one of the most cutthroat financial consultants in the greater Boston area. His specialty was helping wealthy clients maximize profits through what he called aggressive strategies, but what I later recognized as ethically questionable loopholes. My mother, Amanda, dedicated herself to maintaining our family image and social standing. She served on 3 different charity boards, but spent more time discussing who attended the galas than the actual causes they supported. From the beginning, my childhood was marked by high expectations and what I now understand was conditional love. Perfect grades were not celebrated but expected. Piano recitals were not opportunities for joy but assessments of my progress. Even my appearance was constantly scrutinized. "Rachel, straighten your posture," my mother would say in public. Franklin women always present themselves well. I learned early that my parents' love was directly tied to my performance. When I brought home an A- in 7th grade science, my father did not speak to me for 3 days. The message was clear: excellence was the minimum requirement for their approval. Despite this pressure, or perhaps because of it, I excelled academically. I graduated as valedictorian from Brookline High and earned a full scholarship to Bentley University, where I pursued a degree in finance. I chose finance partially to please my father, but also because I genuinely found the field fascinating. The difference was I saw finance as a tool to help people build security, not just wealth. College gave me my first taste of independence. Away from my parents' monitoring, I developed friendships based on genuine connection rather than social standing. My roommate Samantha became the sister I never had, the first person who seemed to like me for myself, not my achievements or family name. I graduated with honors, earning my finance degree with a specialization in sustainable investment. This is where the first major conflict with my father emerged. He had connections at several major investment banks and expected me to follow his footsteps. Instead, I accepted a position at GreenPath Financial, a smaller firm focused on ethical investing. "You are throwing away your potential," he argued when I told him my decision. "That tree hugger company will be bankrupt within 5 years. They're growing 20% annually," I countered. "And their clients sleep well knowing their money is not funding environmental destruction." My mother sided with him, as she always did. "Darling, nobody builds real wealth by being nice. Your father knows this business." After graduation, I moved back home temporarily to save money for my own place. Boston rent prices were astronomical, and my starting salary, while good, would not stretch far in the city. I told myself it would be for 6 months maximum. But those 6 months revealed the growing chasm between my values and theirs. Every dinner became a referendum on my career choices. My father would casually mention colleagues' children landing prestigious positions at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. My mother would sigh about her friend's daughter, who just bought a luxury condo at 24, conveniently forgetting to mention the family money that made it possible. As my 23rd birthday approached, tensions in the house reached an all-time high. I had been working at GreenPath for nearly 7 months, and my performance reviews were excellent. I was on track for an early promotion, something that would normally be celebrated. Instead, my father seemed almost disappointed by my success at a firm he disapproved of. The morning of my birthday, I spent extra time selecting my outfit. A professional navy dress that my mother would approve of, paired with the pearl earrings they had given me for graduation. A peace offering of sorts. Despite everything, Part of me still craved their approval, still hoped this birthday might somehow reset our increasingly strained relationship. I had childhood memories of happier birthdays. My 10th, when my father took a rare day off work to take me to the Museum of Science. My 16th, when my mother arranged a surprise party with actual consideration for my friends, not just the daughters of her social circle. Those glimpses of genuine connection made the current distance all the more painful. My bedroom at their house remained largely unchanged from high school. Debate team trophies lined the bookshelf alongside financial textbooks. The bulletin board still displayed my college acceptance letter and honor society certificates. The room was a shrine to the achiever they wanted, with little evidence of who I actually was becoming. Among my most prized possessions was a small ceramic turtle given to me by my grandmother before she passed. "Slow and steady wins the race," she had told me. And a turtle carries its home wherever it goes. The wisdom of that gift would soon become painfully relevant. I checked my appearance one last time in the mirror that birthday morning, practicing my smile, rehearsing grateful responses to whatever gift they might give me. I was 23, an adult by any measure, yet still caught in the web of seeking parental approval. That night would shatter that pattern forever. My birthday morning began with what seemed like a thoughtful gesture from my mother. She placed a small wrapped box beside my coffee cup, accompanied by a birthday card. "Happy birthday, Rachel," she said with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. 23. My goodness, how time flies. I opened the card to find a generic birthday message with their signatures. The box contained an expensive but impersonal bracelet, something my mother would select based on brand rather than knowing my taste. Still, I expressed genuine gratitude, hoping this was the start of a pleasant day. My father barely looked up from his financial newspaper. "Happy birthday," he muttered, before immediately returning to an article about market projections. No hug, no warmth. Just a perfunctory acknowledgement. I worked from home that day, receiving a steady stream of congratulatory texts and social media messages from friends and colleagues. My boss sent a thoughtful email mentioning how much the team valued my contributions. These small kindnesses highlighted the emotional coldness in my own home. At noon, I met Samantha for lunch at a cafe halfway between our workplaces. She brought a cupcake with a candle and a small gift bag containing a book by a female finance pioneer I admired. "So how are things at the Franklin compound?" she asked, using our nickname for my parents' pristine colonial home. "The usual," I sighed. Dad barely acknowledged my birthday. "Mom got me jewelry I will never wear." Samantha frowned. "Rachel, I worry about you living there. The way they undermine your confidence is not normal. You know that, right?" "They are just old school," I defended automatically. "Tonight will be better. They always put effort into birthday dinners." "Just remember you have options," Samantha said, squeezing my hand. "My couch is always available if things get too toxic." I thanked her but dismissed the concern. Despite our differences, I could not imagine my parents doing anything truly hurtful, especially on my birthday. When I returned home that afternoon, I overheard my parents discussing something in hushed tones in the kitchen. My name floated through the partially open door, along with phrases like financial drain and time to stand on her own. I paused, my stomach tightening, but then convinced myself I had misinterpreted. The pre-dinner atmosphere was strained. My mother fussed over her appearance more than usual, while my father made several private phone calls in his study. I spent the time responding to birthday messages, including one from a colleague asking if everything was okay. Apparently, I had seemed distracted during our morning video call. We drove to Maison Laurent, an upscale French restaurant in downtown Boston, in uncomfortable silence. My father complained about traffic while my mother reminded me 3 times to use proper etiquette since this was a sophisticated establishment. The first part of dinner progressed with superficial pleasantness. We ordered appetizers, and my mother inquired about mundane aspects of my work without actually engaging with my answers. My father ordered an expensive bottle of wine, which I took as a positive sign. As our main courses arrived, however, the conversation shifted. My father cleared his throat in a way I recognized as a prelude to a lecture. "Rachel, "We need to discuss your situation," he began. "Your mother and I have been patient, but at 23, you should be building a meaningful career." I was confused. "I have a career. GreenPath just assigned me to the Sustainable Energy Investment Team. It is a big opportunity." He dismissed this with a wave. "Playing with wind farm investments is not a career. My colleague Jonathan could still get you an interview at Meridian Capital. They have a real training program." "Dad, I do not want to work at Meridian. Their investment philosophy does not align with my values." "Values do not pay mortgages," he snapped. "This fantasy of ethical finance is childish." My mother joined in, her criticism focused on more personal matters. "And darling, that apartment you were looking at in Cambridge? The neighborhood is simply not appropriate for someone of your background. What would people think?" As the dinner progressed, their comments became increasingly hostile. My father criticized my financial knowledge despite my degree. My mother made pointed remarks about my appearance, suggesting I was letting myself go since college. When the waiter brought a small birthday dessert with a candle, creating what should have been a moment of celebration, my father delivered the crushing blow. "Your mother and I have discussed this at length," he said coldly. "You are nothing but a burden with your impractical ideals and stubborn attitude. We have carried you long enough." I stared at him, the tiny candle flame blurring through my tears. "What are you saying?" "We think it is time you moved out," my mother added, her voice artificially gentle. Immediately, the restaurant seemed to fall silent around us. At a nearby table, an older couple glanced over with concerned expressions. The waiter, approaching with coffee, awkwardly retreated. "You are kicking me out? Tonight? On my birthday?" My voice rose despite my effort to maintain composure. "Do not create a scene," my mother hissed. "This is for your own good." "I have been saving for a place," I argued. "I just need another month or two." "Your timeline is not our concern," my father stated flatly. "You have until we return home tonight to pack essentials. You can arrange to collect the rest of your things later." I tried to process what was happening. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You are an adult with a job," my father replied. "Figure it out. Perhaps this will finally teach you how the real world works." The remainder of the dinner passed in a blur. I could not eat the dessert placed before me. My parents continued their meal as if they had not just shattered my world. The drive home was conducted in icy silence, my mother occasionally sighing dramatically when she noticed me wiping away tears. At the house, I moved in a state of shock, frantically pulling items from drawers and closets. What does one pack when suddenly homeless? Professional clothes for work, toiletries, laptop and chargers, important documents, the ceramic turtle from my grandmother. My parents watched from the doorway, offering neither help nor comfort. My mother reminded me not to take anything they had purchased, which eliminated most of my wardrobe and possessions. "We expect your house key on the counter before you leave," my father instructed. Within an hour, I had filled one suitcase and a backpack with whatever I could carry. As I rolled the suitcase down the front steps, the full weight of my situation hit me. I was homeless on my 23rd birthday, rejected by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I placed my key on the kitchen counter, took one final glance at the home I had grown up in, and walked out the door. It closed behind me with a definitive click. The crisp autumn air hit my face as I walked away from the only home I had ever known. Each step down the familiar neighborhood sidewalk felt surreal, as if I were moving through a bad dream. The weight of my suitcase nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. Street lamps cast long shadows as I made my way to the bus stop 3 blocks away, the same stop I had used throughout high school. I sat on the cold metal bench, finally allowing the sobs to overtake me. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call Samantha. The screen displayed birthday notifications, a cruel reminder of how quickly this day had transformed from celebration to catastrophe. "Sam," I choked out when she answered. "They kicked me out. I am at the Walnut Street bus stop with one suitcase." "What?" "Stay right there," she responded without hesitation. "Do not move. I am sending you an Uber right now." Within minutes, a car pulled up. The driver, an older woman named Marlene, took one look at my tear-stained face and suitcase and seemed to understand immediately. Rough night, sweetheart, she asked gently. My parents kicked me out on my birthday, I explained, my voice barely a whisper. Marlene shook her head. I have a daughter your age. Cannot imagine doing that to her. You hang tough, okay? Family is not always blood. That simple kindness from a stranger unleashed a fresh wave of tears. We drove in compassionate silence to Samantha's apartment in Somerville. Samantha was waiting outside her building when we arrived. She hugged me tightly on the sidewalk, then helped carry my suitcase up 3 flights of stairs to her small one-bedroom apartment. Once inside the safety of her home, the full emotional impact hit me. I collapsed onto her couch, crying so hard I could barely breathe. Samantha sat beside me, holding me while I released the pain of betrayal. I knew they were critical, but this? I gasped between sobs. How could they do this? Because they are toxic, controlling people. Samantha said firmly. I know they are your parents and you love them, but what they did was cruel and wrong. She made me tea and set up the pull-out couch with fresh sheets. This is your home for as long as you need it, she assured me. We will figure everything out tomorrow. Despite her kindness, sleep was impossible. I lay awake all night, replaying my father's words. Nothing but a burden. 23 years reduced to that single, cutting phrase. By morning, my sadness had hardened into something else. Determination, perhaps. Or the first seedlings of revenge. The sunrise brought clarity. This was not a temporary situation I could fix with an apology or compromise. My parents had made their position clear. It was time to accept that and plan accordingly. First priority, financial security. I logged into my bank accounts to assess my situation. My personal checking account contained my modest savings, roughly $5,000. Not enough for a proper apartment in Boston, but a start. To my alarm, I discovered I had been removed as an authorized user on the family emergency credit card. However, one crucial oversight on their part, I was still listed as an authorized user on their primary American Express and Visa accounts. These were the cards my father used for both personal and business expenses. As a finance professional, I understood exactly what this meant. Later that morning, I met Jessica, a former classmate who worked at Eastern Bank. Over coffee, I discreetly explained my situation. So legally, what are my rights here? I am still an authorized user on these accounts. Jessica chose her words carefully. As an authorized user, you have legal permission to use the accounts. Any actions you take that are within normal usage patterns would be perfectly legal. However, she lowered her voice, I would advise against making charges they could claim are fraudulent. I am not interested in spending their money, I clarified. I am more concerned about protecting myself. She nodded understanding. In that case, you might want to look into account security measures. Completely legitimate. Especially if you believe there might be unusual activity. This conversation planted the seed for what would follow. I was still reluctant to take action that might harm my parents, despite their cruelty. But Samantha helped me see the situation more clearly. Rachel, they threw you out without warning on your birthday, she reminded me that evening. They have shown you exactly how much consideration they have for your well-being. It is time to protect yourself. I spent hours researching tenant rights, discovering that my parents' illegal eviction could actually be grounds for legal action. I looked into emergency housing options but found waiting lists months long. Every path forward required money, which brought me back to the accounts where I remained an authorized user. My position at GreenPath was secure, but entry-level finance jobs in Boston paid barely enough to cover basic expenses. I contacted several apartment complexes, discovering that even the smallest studio required first and last month's rent plus security deposit a minimum of $4,000 upfront. As practical concerns mounted, my emotional response evolved. Shock gave way to anger. These people who had demanded perfection from me for years had discarded me without a second thought. The financial education they had insisted upon had given me intimate knowledge of their accounts, investments, and credit structures. I called Marcus, an IT security specialist I had dated briefly in college. Without revealing my specific intentions, I asked about digital footprints and account security. Hypothetically, If someone wanted to take legitimate actions on accounts they are authorized to access, but maintain privacy, what would be the safest approach? Marcus explained various security protocols, emphasizing the importance of using secure networks and being mindful of location tracking. Public library computers are actually pretty good for sensitive financial tasks, he advised. They wipe search histories regularly and have decent security. That night, I drafted a detailed plan. I would not steal from my parents or make fraudulent charges. Instead, I would use my authorized status to implement security measures that would protect the accounts from suspicious activity while creating significant inconvenience for them. The ethical considerations weighed heavily on me. Was I stooping to their level by seeking revenge? Or was this simply a necessary step to establish boundaries with people who had shown they did not respect mine? After hours of internal debate, I decided this was not revenge, but consequences. They had taught me that actions have consequences my entire life. It was time they experienced that lesson themselves. The Boston Public Library opened at 9 the next morning. I arrived 15 minutes early, professional attire disguising my personal turmoil. I selected a computer station in a quiet corner, partially obscured by bookshelves, but not so hidden as to appear suspicious. First, I documented my authorized user status on each account. I took screenshots of account profiles showing my name, printed account statements from the past 3 months showing my status, and saved digital copies of all relevant information. This was crucial not just for my plan, but for legal protection. Credit bureaus allow security freezes for legitimate protection against fraud. As an authorized user with full legal access, I had every right to request these security measures. I navigated to Experian first, followed by Equifax and TransUnion. For each bureau, I initiated a security freeze on my parents' credit files, citing concerns about unusual activity and preventative security measures. The freezes would prevent any new credit applications, loan approvals, or account openings without a special PIN or explicit security verification. I timed these actions strategically. My father typically applied for new business lines of credit at the beginning of each quarter. Major client invoices were processed mid-month. The credit freezes would create maximum disruption to his business operations without technically doing anything wrong. Next, I contacted each credit card company through secure messaging, expressing concern about several unusual purchases that had appeared recently. I requested verification procedures for all transactions over $500, a standard security feature many cardholders activate. For the American Express account, I enrolled in purchase verification requiring text confirmation for all transactions. The phone number I provided for these verifications? A Google Voice number I had just created, which forwarded to my new prepaid phone that my parents had no knowledge of. To monitor the effects of my actions, I set up transaction alerts on all accounts. These would notify me of declined transactions, verification requests, and account access attempts without revealing my involvement. With the financial aspects in motion, I turned my attention to practical survival needs. Through a coworker at Greenpath, I learned about an affordable studio apartment in Medford, just north of Boston. At $900 monthly, it stretched my budget but offered independence. The property manager initially hesitated at my limited credit history but was impressed by my employment at a financial firm. I paid the security deposit and first month rent, nearly depleting my savings but securing a crucial foothold of stability. For additional income, I interviewed for weekend shifts at a local coffee shop. The manager, Diana, hired me on the spot after learning I could help with their bookkeeping systems. This extra income would provide the financial buffer I needed while building my emergency fund. While my parents attended their weekly country club brunch, I made a quick visit to their house using the spare key hidden in the garage utility box, a key they had forgotten about. I retrieved my birth certificate, social security card, passport, and other essential documents they had kept in their home office safe. The combination was my birthday, a bitter irony not lost on me. I also took photos of financial documents relating to accounts where I was listed. This was not theft, but documentation of legally relevant information. I left everything else untouched. including valuable items that were technically mine but could complicate matters. My next stop was Eastern Bank, where I opened new accounts completely separate from any previously shared with my parents. I provided my new address and updated contact information, ensuring all communications would come directly to me. I set up direct deposit for my GreenPath paycheck and established automatic transfers to a newly created emergency fund. At the post office, I completed a change of address form, redirecting any mail in my name to my new apartment. I also registered with a mail scanning service that would immediately notify me of any important documents or potential attempts by my parents to access my information. Throughout this process, I experienced waves of conflicting emotions. Part of me felt guilty, anticipating the frustration my parents would soon experience. Another part felt righteous satisfaction, imagining my father attempting to impress clients with his premium credit card only to have it declined. Mostly, I felt sad that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. I consulted with a volunteer at a legal aid clinic, carefully outlining the actions I had taken and confirming they were all within my legal rights as an authorized user. The attorney assured me that security freezes and verification procedures were reasonable protective measures, especially following a sudden change in living situation. Family financial disputes are complicated, she advised. Document everything and avoid any actions that could be interpreted as retaliatory or fraudulent. That night, I spent my first evening in my new apartment. The space was tiny, just 300 square feet with a kitchenette, bathroom, and main room that served as both bedroom and living area. But it was mine. No judgmental comments about my choices. No conditional approval based on meeting impossible standards. I unpacked my grandmother's ceramic turtle and placed it on the small windowsill overlooking a courtyard. Carrying my home with me, I whispered, feeling her wisdom across the years. As I prepared for bed on my newly purchased air mattress, I received the first notification, a declined transaction at Morton's Steakhouse, my father's favorite restaurant for client dinners. The plan was working. Now I would watch as the consequences of their actions unfolded, just as they had forced me to face the consequences of independence without warning or support. The effects of my actions materialized faster than I anticipated. 3 days after implementing the credit freezes, I received a text from Taylor, a family friend who worked at my father's firm. "Just witnessed the most awkward business lunch ever," she wrote. "Your dad card was declined 3 times with the Westfield clients. Had to ask his junior associate to pay. Never seen him so flustered." I felt a complex mixture of emotions reading this. Satisfaction, certainly, but also a strange sadness. My father prided himself on projecting an image of success and control. This public embarrassment would have been excruciating for him. 2 days later, my former neighbor Brenda called. "Rachel, is everything okay with your mom? She was turned away at Salon Nouveau yesterday. Something about payment issues." She left in tears. The salon had been my mother's social headquarters for years, where she gathered intelligence on community happenings and maintained her carefully crafted image. Being denied service there would devastate her social standing. Reports continued filtering in through mutual connections. My father's business partner questioned his financial stability during a staff meeting. My mother was quietly removed from the chairperson position on her favorite charity board after their annual donation payment failed to process. I monitored the situation through transaction alerts and notification settings. Multiple authorization requests came through to my Google Voice number daily, none of which I approved. My father made increasingly desperate calls to credit bureaus, attempting to lift the security freezes without the required verification information. The timing could not have been worse for them. My father's firm was in final negotiations with a major new client, a deal that would have significantly expanded their business. According to Taylor, the client expressed concerns about the firm's financial stability after witnessing the credit card issues and ultimately took their business elsewhere. My parents' mortgage lender flagged their account for review after detecting the credit freezes, temporarily halting their refinancing application. The luxury car my mother had been planning to lease fell through when the dealership could not process the credit application. Their attempts to contact me grew increasingly frequent. First came angry voicemails demanding explanations. Then text messages oscillating between accusations and awkward attempts at reconciliation. Finally, emails with thinly veiled threats about legal consequences for any interference with their accounts, though they never directly accused me of anything, likely because they had no proof. I maintained professional focus at GreenPath despite my personal turmoil. My team leader noted my exceptional dedication, unaware of the chaos in my personal life. I received praise for a sustainable investment strategy one developed for a key client, further validating my career choice my father had so dismissively rejected. My weekly therapy sessions, covered by my employee benefits, provided crucial emotional support. Dr. Marshall helped me process the complex grief of family estrangement. What you are experiencing is the loss of the parents you thought you had, she explained. You are mourning the relationship you deserved, but never truly had. For weeks after my birthday eviction, I ran into my mother friend Patricia at a coffee shop. Not recognizing me, she sat at the adjacent table and began gossiping with another woman from their social circle. The Franklins are having serious financial troubles, she whispered loudly enough for me to overhear. William had to cancel their Nantucket vacation rental, and Amanda was asked to step down from the hospital foundation board. Something about credit issues. I heard they had to let their housekeeper go, her companion added. And their daughter moved out suddenly. Family drama, I suspect. I sipped my coffee, invisible to these women who had been fixtures at my parents' social events for years. They had never actually seen me, just as my parents had never truly seen me beyond their expectations. The local business journal published a small item noting that Franklin Financial Advisors was restructuring client services amid industry challenges, a euphemism for the downsizing my father had been forced to implement as clients departed. Despite witnessing these consequences, I felt no triumph or joy. Instead, each new development reinforced my understanding that I had made the right decision in establishing independence. My parents' controlled, image-obsessed world was collapsing without my knowledge or active participation. I was simply watching from a distance as the natural consequences of their actions and priorities unfolded. My own life was stabilizing. The coffee shop job supplemented my GreenPath income enough to cover expenses and gradually rebuild my savings. My tiny apartment became a peaceful sanctuary decorated with secondhand furniture and simple comforts. I developed friendships with neighbors and coworkers who appreciated me for myself, not family connections or achievements. 6 weeks after my birthday, I received the most desperate voicemail yet from my mother. Rachel, please call us. We need to talk. Your father's business is suffering, and we think you might know something about our account issues. We are willing to discuss your moving back home under certain conditions. The message revealed they still had not grasped the fundamental reality. I would never return to a conditional relationship where love and basic security could be withdrawn on a whim. Their continued assumption that I would want to return to their control after such treatment confirmed I had made the right choice in creating distance. As the financial pressure mounted, my parents began liquidating assets. Their vacation property in Cape Cod was quietly listed for sale. My father downsized his office space and let go of 2 junior associates. My mother's silver Mercedes was replaced by a more modest vehicle. These changes reflected more than just financial necessity. They represented the crumbling of the facade they had maintained for decades, the image of perfect success and control that had been more important to them than their own daughter's well-being. Through it all, I maintained my distance, neither gloating over their difficulties nor rushing to their aid. The credit freezes and security measures remained in place, not as active revenge, but as protective boundaries between their financial chaos and my newly stable life. By watching the consequences unfold without intervention, I was learning perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. I was not responsible for managing my parents' emotions or fixing their problems. For the first time in my life, I was focused entirely on building my own future rather than meeting their expectations. 2 months after my birthday eviction, an unexpected knock at my apartment door interrupted my Saturday morning coffee ritual. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway, looking noticeably less polished than usual. My father's suit appeared slightly rumpled, my mother typically perfect hair showing visible roots. My heart raced as conflicting instincts battled within me. Part of me wanted to ignore them, maintaining the boundary I had established. Another part recognized this confrontation was inevitable and perhaps necessary for my own closure. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. How did you find my address? Your colleague Melissa mentioned Medford when she called the house looking for you, my mother explained, attempting to peek past me into the apartment. We asked around. What do you want? I kept my voice calm despite my internal turmoil. We need to talk, my father said, his tone authoritative, but with an unfamiliar edge of desperation. There have been serious issues with our accounts, and we believe you might have information. This is not an appropriate place for this conversation, I responded, conscious of neighbors potentially overhearing. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. 20 minutes, then you need to leave. They entered my small studio, their expressions revealing thinly veiled judgment of my modest living conditions. My mother's eyes lingered on the second-hand furniture, while my father scanned the space as if cataloging its deficiencies. You are behind this, aren't you? He began without preamble, his accusation hanging in the air. Our credit cards. The account freezes, the verification blocks. This is your revenge. I remained standing while they sat awkwardly on my futon. I am an authorized user on those accounts, I stated calmly. After being unexpectedly rendered homeless, I took reasonable security precautions for accounts where my name is legally listed. You deliberately sabotaged us, my father's voice rose. Do you have any idea the damage this has caused? I have lost clients. Your mother has been humiliated in front of her friends. Rachel, my mother interjected with forced gentleness. Whatever grievance you think you have about your birthday, this response is childish and destructive. Their complete lack of self-awareness was stunning. I walked to my desk and retrieved my phone. Opening the voice recorder app, I recorded our birthday dinner conversation. I informed them, watching their expressions shift from indignation to alarm. Would you like to hear yourselves calling me a burden before throwing me out without warning? I played a short clip where my father's voice clearly stated, You are nothing but a burden with your impractical ideals and stubborn attitude. We have carried you long enough. My mother's face paled. My father began a defensive response, but was interrupted by another knock at the door. I opened it to find Marcus Harrison, my father's business partner, holding a folder of documents. His presence in my apartment was as surprising to me as it was to my parents. Rachel, I apologize for the intrusion, Marcus said formally. I was told William would be here. I have matters that cannot wait. The tension in the room shifted as Marcus entered, nodding curtly to my parents. He had clearly followed them here, timing his arrival deliberately. William, we need to discuss these discrepancies immediately, he stated, opening the folder to reveal financial statements. Client trust accounts showing irregular transfers dating back 18 months. Transactions that occurred well before any recent credit issues. My father's face drained of color. This is not the place, Marcus. No more delays, Marcus insisted. The board meeting is Monday, and these questions will be raised. I came here hoping for explanations that might salvage your position. I watched this exchange with growing understanding. The credit freezes had not created my father's financial problems, they had merely exposed existing issues he had been concealing. My mother turned to my father, confusion and alarm replacing her previous condescension. William, what is he talking about? What client accounts? The carefully constructed hierarchy in our family dynamic crumbled before my eyes. My father, always the unquestioned authority, suddenly appeared cornered and diminished. My mother, who had built her identity around his success and standing, looked lost. There have been some temporary allocation adjustments, my father admitted reluctantly. Nothing improper, just timing issues with certain investments. Marcus shook his head. Misappropriation of client funds is the term the regulatory board will use. The credit issues brought everything to the surface, but these problems have been building for quite some time. My mother turned to me, her carefully maintained facade cracking. Did you know about this when you froze the accounts? No, I answered honestly. I was protecting myself after being thrown out. I had no idea about any underlying issues. The revelation hung heavy in the room. My father's financial empire, the source of his identity and control over our family, had apparently been built on deception that predated any actions I had taken. The country club membership, the Nantucket house, the donations to get on those charity boards, my mother whispered. Connecting dots. We could not actually afford any of it, could we? My father did not answer, his silence more damning than any explanation. For the first time, I saw my parents clearly not as the powerful, perfect authorities they had presented themselves to be, but as deeply flawed individuals whose value system had prioritized appearance over substance, control over connection. I need you both to leave, I said firmly. Marcus, I appreciate your coming here, but whatever business issues exist between you and my father should be handled elsewhere. Of course, Marcus agreed, collecting his documents. Rachel, for what it is worth, the board always thought highly of your ethical stance. Perhaps you were the only Franklin who truly understood finance. After they departed, my mother lingering with an unspoken question in her eyes, I sat alone in my apartment, processing what had transpired. The revenge I thought I had orchestrated had merely accelerated an inevitable reckoning. My parents had been architects of their own downfall long before I took any action. Word spread quickly through their social and business circles. My father was asked to resign from his firm pending investigation. Their membership at the country club was suspended not because of the credit issues, but because of questions about the source of funds used for dues and expenditures. 2 weeks later, I received my first genuine apology from my mother via email. I never questioned where the money came from or what it cost in other ways, she wrote, including our relationship with you. I am sorry, Rachel, not just for your birthday, but for all the times I chose status over supporting you. My father's apology came later and with more qualifications, but contained one meaningful acknowledgement. You saw through the facade I created long before anyone else. My criticism of your career choices came from fear that you would expose the hollow center of my own. These admissions did not immediately heal the damage between us, but they marked the first honest communications we had ever shared. The artificial dynamics that had defined our family began to dissolve, creating space for something new potentially to emerge. 3 months after the confrontation in my apartment, Boston entered the crisp beauty of autumn once again. My life had found a rhythm and stability I had never experienced under my parents' roof. My promotion at Greenpath came through, recognizing my work developing a pioneering framework for evaluating investment ethics. The salary increase allowed me to add small comforts to my apartment and build my emergency fund beyond what I had ever thought possible. More valuable than financial security was the community I had built. Weekend brunches with Samantha and coworkers. A book club with neighbors from my building. These connections were based on genuine sharing rather than performance or status. My parents' situation had stabilized, though drastically changed. My father avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with investigators and making restitution arrangements for clients. His financial empire was gone, replaced by a small consulting practice focused, ironically, on business ethics compliance. My mother sold most of her designer possessions and took a part-time position at a local art gallery, discovering a genuine interest in creative expression. They moved from their sprawling Brookline home to a modest condominium, a downsizing that reflected more than financial necessity. According to my mother, the smaller space felt more honest. Both began seeing therapists. Another irony given how they had dismissed my own mental health concerns in college as excessive self-focus. Their counseling sessions addressed not just the recent upheaval, but the long-standing patterns that had damaged our family relationships. After much consideration, I agreed to meet them for coffee at a neutral location. We selected a quiet cafe halfway between our homes, a geographical compromise that symbolized the emotional middle ground we were attempting to establish. Thank you for agreeing to see us, my mother began when we were seated. She looked different, smaller somehow, but more authentic without the armor of perfect hair and designer clothes. We have been doing a lot of work in therapy, my father added, the phrase sounding foreign from his lips. learning about boundaries and conditional versus unconditional relationships. I nodded but remained guarded. I am glad to hear that. It has been helpful in my own healing process as well. We established basic parameters for limited contact moving forward. Monthly coffee meetings. No unannounced visits. Financial independence for all parties. These boundaries were not punitive but protective, creating safety for potential rebuilding. My father's business had transformed completely. Franklin Compliance Consultants specialized in helping small investment firms navigate ethical regulations. I teach them all the rules I spent years circumventing. He explained with unexpected humility. My previous experience makes me particularly effective at identifying potential issues. My mother had discovered that without the pressure of maintaining social standing, she actually enjoyed genuine connections with others. The gallery visitors do not care what car I drive or where I vacation, she told me. They want to discuss the artwork and what it evokes. It is refreshing. I offered limited professional advice about their personal finances, establishing clear boundaries around this potentially complicated area. I helped them create a realistic budget aligned with their new income reality and recommended reputable financial advisors who could provide ongoing guidance. In November, they tentatively invited me to join them for Thanksgiving dinner. I considered declining but ultimately accepted with specific conditions, a short visit. In their new home that carried no painful memories, with permission to leave if interactions became unhealthy. The dinner was awkward but represented progress. We navigated conversation carefully, each of us working to replace old patterns with healthier interactions. When my father began to criticize my investment strategy for my retirement account, he caught himself mid-sentence. "I apologize," he said, the words still unfamiliar on his tongue. "Your financial decisions are your own. And given recent history, my advice is probably best ignored anyway." This moment of self-awareness, small but significant, demonstrated the shifting power dynamics between us. No longer was he the unquestioned authority whose approval I desperately sought. We were adults with separate lives, negotiating a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than control and compliance. As months passed, I continued building my career in ethical finance. My approach, once dismissed by my father as naive, was gaining recognition in the industry. I was invited to speak at a conference on sustainable investment, where several attendees mentioned they had consulted with a Mr. Franklin on compliance issues, unaware of our connection. The irony was not lost on either of us when I mentioned this during our next meeting. "Life has a way of bringing things full circle," he acknowledged. "Your principles remained consistent while mine had to be completely reconstructed." I maintained a healthy caution in rebuilding trust with my parents. Dr. Marshall, my therapist, emphasized that forgiveness did not require forgetting or removing all consequences. "Healthy boundaries are not punishment," she reminded me. "They're the foundation for any relationship that might grow in the future." I scheduled a consultation with a financial advisor specializing in family wealth dynamics, seeking objective guidance on maintaining appropriate financial separation from my parents while supporting reasonable reconciliation. Her advice reinforced my instincts: separate accounts, transparent expectations, and gradual trust building through consistent behavior over time. My personal emergency fund grew to 6 months of expenses, creating a security I had never known. This financial buffer represented more than monetary safety. It was freedom from the fear that had driven so many of my decisions previously. As my next birthday approached, I chose to celebrate on my own terms. I planned a weekend trip to Vermont with friends, people who valued me for exactly who I was. No performance required, no conditional acceptance. The day before my departure, a small package arrived from my parents. Inside was a new ceramic turtle, similar to my grandmother, but distinct. The card read simply, "Carrying wisdom forward. Your journey is your own, but know you are loved along the way." This simple acknowledgement, the recognition of my independence, without demands or expectations, represented more progress than grand gestures could have achieved. The greatest lesson from this painful chapter was understanding that true self-worth comes from within, not from others' approval or external validation. By forcing me into independence, my parents had inadvertently given me the opportunity to discover my own strength and values. I learned that family relationships, like all connections, must be based on mutual respect and genuine care, not obligation or control. Sometimes the healthiest form of love requires distance and boundaries. Sometimes forgiveness coexists with caution. Most importantly, I discovered that rebuilding after betrayal does not mean returning to what was, but creating something entirely new, something healthier, more authentic, and ultimately more fulfilling. As I celebrate my 24th birthday surrounded by chosen family, I recognize that the greatest gift from the previous year's painful events was the freedom to define success on my own terms. Financial security matters, but not at the cost of integrity. Status and appearances mean nothing compared to genuine connection. And sometimes, the family we build matters more than the one we were born into. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal by someone you trusted? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Did you find, as I did, that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most necessary beginnings? Like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that even after the deepest betrayals, healing and growth are possible. Thank you for listening to my journey.